The hiss of the suitcase zipper echoed through the room, a sound that seemed to match the slow, insidious unraveling of our marriage. Amber, my wife of 10 years, straightened her blazer, a flicker of something in her eyes, a nervousness, perhaps. I assumed it was just the usual anxiety before a work trip to Chicago, a 3-day conference that, if I'm being honest with myself, had started to feel more like a much-needed escape. For weeks, Amber had been distant. She worked late, had whispered phone calls in the other room, and wore a new perfume that lingered in the air like a reminder of a life I was no longer part of. The signs were there, small cracks in the foundation of our life, but I didn't want to see them. I loved her deeply, with a kind of desperation, convincing myself it was stress or exhaustion. Anything but the truth. That night, as I tucked our daughter Lily into bed, the nausea hit me. It was like a wave that crashed over me, a sense of wrongness I couldn't shake. I went back to the bedroom to find Amber gone. Her suitcase sat open on the bed, a silent, accusing presence. A gut feeling, an instinct, pushed me to look inside. I hesitated. This felt wrong, a betrayal of trust, though that trust had already been fractured. But the suspicion gnawing at me was stronger. I powered on her iPad, my hands shaking. The screen lit up, revealing an open email. It was from Wyatt, a colleague of hers. "Can't wait for Chicago, baby. 3 days just with you." The room seemed to close in around me. Chicago wasn't a work trip, it was a rendezvous. My wife, the woman I had shared my life with, was having an affair. I felt a cold fury rise up, like nothing I had ever experienced. It was detached, methodical, as though I were watching myself from a distance. I scrolled through their messages, a sickening record of their betrayal, dates, sweet nothings, plans for a future that didn't include me. The rage was cold and calculated. I wouldn't act impulsively. I would make my revenge precise and devastating. I printed every message, every photo, every piece of damning evidence. I slipped the stack neatly into her suitcase, wedged between her favorite dress and a silk scarf. Then I added a framed photo of Lily, her innocent eyes staring up at me, a silent accusation. The next morning, I played the role of the dutiful husband. I made coffee, packed Lily's lunch, kissed Amber goodbye. She smiled, but it was strained, brittle. "See you Monday," she said, her voice shaking. "Love you. Have a good trip," I replied, my voice flat. Emotionless. I watched her car disappear around the corner, and then I called Wyatt's wife. Her name barely registered in my mind. "I think you need to see something," I said, my voice steady. "Come over whenever you're ready." 2 hours later, she arrived. A small woman with eyes full of raw grief, holding the printouts in her hands. We sat in silence, bound by the same pain. 2 women, left in the wake of Amber and Wyatt's selfishness. That Sunday evening, I received a text from Amber. "We need to talk." It wasn't a question. She arrived home hours later, pale and drawn. When she saw Wyatt's wife sitting on the couch, Lily quietly playing at her feet, she froze. Her eyes flicked to the suitcase, the printed evidence spilling out across the floor. The blood drained from her face. She staggered backward, hand flying to her mouth, and collapsed. The confrontation that followed was brutal. Tears, accusations, recriminations. Wyatt's wife, initially devastated, found a cold resolve. She left, taking their children, leaving Wyatt a voicemail that echoed through the room. It was short, sharp, and final. Amber, stripped of her lies, had no defense. She sobbed, begged for forgiveness, but her words were hollow. The damage had been done. The trust was shattered, and our life, the life I thought we were building, lay in ruins. Lily slept through the entire ordeal. The next morning, I looked at her face, so much like Amber's, and the grief hit me again. But beneath the sadness, something else stirred. A flicker of resolve. I would protect Lily. I would rebuild my life, step by painful step. I filed for divorce. Amber moved out, a shadow of the woman she once was. Wyatt, shunned by his wife and colleagues, left the city. His reputation was destroyed. The following months were a blur, court proceedings, sleepless nights, and the constant ache of loss. But slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I focused on Lily, on being the father she needed. I started therapy, addressing the pain, the anger, the betrayal. I rebuilt my career, my friendships, my family. Years later, I'm no longer the man I was. The naive, trusting husband is gone. I've become someone tougher, more guarded, but also more resilient. The scars remain, a reminder of the pain I endured, but they no longer define me. I've learned to forgive, not for Amber or Wyatt, but for myself. Forgiveness isn't about excusing their actions. It's about releasing the bitterness and anger that poison my soul. It's about letting go of the past and embracing the future. A future that is mine to create. A future filled with hope and the unwavering love of my daughter. The pain may linger, but it no longer holds me captive. I am free.